In the world of the unexplained, few stories are as bizarre as the tale of Sergei Ponomarenko, a man who claimed to have traveled from 1958 to the early 2000s. His story is one that has captured the imagination of those who believe in time travel and the possibility that some individuals may have broken the boundaries of time itself. But is this tale fact, fiction, or something in between? Today we dive deep into the mysterious case of Sergei Ponomarenko and explore the clues he left behind, most notably the photographs that seemingly defy the normal flow of time. The story begins in Kyiv, Ukraine, in the early 2000s, when a man appeared in the streets looking disoriented and out of place, dressed in clothing that seemed to be from a different era, specifically the 1950s. Sergei Ponomarenko claimed he had no idea where he was. When he was stopped by local authorities, they initially thought he was confused or perhaps suffering from some kind of mental breakdown. But what Sergei said next shocked them. He claimed to have come from the year 1958. Naturally, the authorities didn't believe him at first. After all, time travel is a concept reserved for science fiction, not real life. However, Sergei's confusion seemed genuine, and his appearance, his clothes, mannerisms, and overall demeanor seemed eerily out of sync with the modern world around him. The Soviet-era ID card. To back up his claim, Sergei presented an ID card that looked authentic, but was clearly from another time. It was an official document from the Soviet era, bearing all the hallmarks of identification used during the 1950s. Not only that, but the ID card showed that Sergei was born in 1932, confirming that he would have been in his mid-20s at the time he claimed to have left 1958. At this point, the authorities grew more concerned. They were dealing with a man who, by all accounts, should have lived decades ago. To make things even stranger, Sergei was carrying an old-fashioned camera, a model consistent with cameras produced in the Soviet Union during the late 1950s. Things took a further turn for the strange when Sergei's camera was developed. The authorities, still skeptical but intrigued, decided to develop the film Sergei had in his camera. What they found was baffling. The photos showed images of Kyiv, but not as it appeared in the 2000s. Instead, they depicted scenes from the 1950s, old cars, people in period clothing, and buildings that had since been renovated or no longer existed in their original form. One of the most striking images was a photograph of Sergei himself standing in front of a well-known landmark, looking exactly the same as he did in the present day. But how could this be? If the photo was truly from the 1950s, how could Sergei have not aged? The image, as well as several others, defied explanation, and people who saw the photos couldn't help but be drawn into the mystery. At this point, the investigation took a surreal turn. The photographs were examined by experts who determined that they were indeed from the 1950s. There were no signs of digital manipulation or tampering, leaving investigators and the public puzzled as to how such photos could exist. When questioned further, Sergei claimed that he had been walking through Kyiv in 1958, taking photographs with his camera when he noticed a strange object in the sky. According to Sergei, the object was unlike anything he had ever seen, a bright, disc-like craft that seemed to hover in the air. Fascinated, he aimed his camera at the object and snapped a photo. It was in that moment, he claimed, that everything changed. In the blink of an eye, Sergei said he found himself in the Kyiv of the early 2000s, surrounded by unfamiliar technology in a completely transformed city. He had no idea how he had gotten there, and no way to explain what had happened to him. All he had were his clothes, his camera, and his ID, none of which belonged in the modern world. As Sergei's story spread, it attracted the attention of not only local officials, but also those fascinated by paranormal phenomena. Some believed he was a genuine time traveler, while others were convinced it was an elaborate hoax. But before anyone could dig deeper into Sergei's life, something unexpected happened. He vanished. Sergei Ponomarenko disappeared just as suddenly and mysteriously as he had arrived, leaving behind only the strange photographs in his ID card. No one knew where he had gone or how he had disappeared without a trace. The authorities were left with more questions than answers. Was Sergei taken back to his own time? Did he somehow slip through the cracks of reality, returning to the 1950s? Or had he been abducted by the same mysterious force that had brought him to the future in the first place. As with any extraordinary claim, skepticism was inevitable. Many people believe that the story of Sergei Ponomarenko is nothing more than an elaborate urban legend, perhaps created to entertain or deceive. Some argue that the photographs could have been staged or digitally altered, and that Sergei was simply playing a role in a fabricated time travel story. On the other hand, there are those who remain convinced that Sergei's story is genuine. They point to the authenticity of the photographs, the details in his ID card, and the fact that no one could provide a clear explanation for how the images from the 1950s could exist if they were fake. In the years since Sergei's disappearance, the story has been debated, analyzed, and dissected in countless forums, paranormal shows, and online communities. But the truth remains elusive. Sergei Ponomarenko, whether real or fictional, has become a part of the lore surrounding time travel, a figure who, for a brief moment, seemed to bridge the gap between the past and the present. The story of Sergei Ponomarenko continues to be one of the most compelling mysteries for those interested in time travel and the unexplained. Whether you believe in the possibility of time slips, alternate realities, or unexplained phenomena, this case has all the elements of a great unsolved mystery. Was Sergei a genuine time traveler who accidentally found himself decades in the future? Or was it all an elaborate ruse, created to deceive and confuse? We may never know the truth, but one thing is certain: this story continues to captivate and inspire those who are drawn to the mysteries of time. If you enjoyed this journey through time and mystery, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to VeilQuest,